Hello and welcome to It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi on Megapix Media. Joining me today is Cody Battershill, who is founder and CEO of the Canada Action Group. Thanks for joining us today, Cody.
Hey, thanks, Mario, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Let me just start, Cody, by can you give me a description of what Canada Action is and its purpose?
So Canada Action is a advocacy movement. We are a nonprofit, and it is our goal to have Canadians join us in a constructive and balanced conversation about the importance of our resource sector from coast to coast, all resources, and our environmental leadership that we are working on, that we are, continually trying to improve, and in many regards where we are already world leading. And so specifically around pipelines, oil and gas, renewables, you name it, we are really trying to expand that conversation to be inclusive and constructive.
Okay, the obvious question is the why. Why is it necessary, especially in this day and age and now, to have an advocacy group for the resource sector?
Well, 10 years ago, I was in Vancouver. I saw Lush Cosmetics talking about shutting down the tar sands. And I realized at that time, because I don't work in energy, I'm a realtor, in fact, but I realized at that time that there was so much misinformation, there was so much misunderstanding. And I thought, this is a natural resource that we are truly fortunate, all of our resources we're fortunate to have. They create jobs, tax revenues, and support our quality of life. Let's make sure that people's opinions are based on a balanced set of facts, looking at Canada and the world. And out of that, that was the genesis for Canada Action, because there's so much misdirected misinformation against Canada that is not warranted, that is not factually accurate. And we have seen our families, and I think the global environment suffers when you prevent Canada from trading with the world and other resource producers are able to take over that market share.
Now, tell me a little bit, I don't know if you have numbers handy, you probably can say numbers off the top of your head, but give me some context here of the importance of this sector to the overall economy.
So when we look at natural resources in Canada, we're talking about 1.8 million jobs. That's 1.8 million families in our country from coast to coast. Approximately 20% of our economy. Our number one export is resources. Our number one export in that category is energy. And also in terms of business investment, even if we go back to a study from McDonald-Laurier Institute for 2010, the number one component of our manufacturing sector at that time was resources. And so the entire economy, very, very important. Natural resources are a real strength for Canada. Also, specifically to oil and gas, $380 billion generated by the oil and gas industry, not the industry, but the men and women who work in our Canadian industry. These are real people. These are real families, real livelihoods. That's how much money has been generated to pay for Canada's government programs, which is, of course, healthcare, education, emergency responders. Now, in a time of COVID more than ever, it's important that we recognize and understand the lights, how the lights are staying on, how the heat's running, how the economy's moving still. Resources are a huge part of that, and a huge opportunity for us to support for our COVID recovery.
Now, when you look at this overall issue, right, I guess there's probably the perception out there that this is an Alberta issue, right?
There can be that perception, but we have, of course, liquefied natural gas in British Columbia. We also have LNG facilities in Quebec and Nova Scotia that are trying to get off the ground. We have, farming, we have fishing, we have mining, we have all of these different forestry, we have all of these different resources and issues all over the country. And there's thousands of companies outside of Alberta who are supply chain with the oil and gas industry. You have workers living all over the country, flying to work in the oil and gas industry. And the oil and gas industry is offshore, Atlantic, Newfoundland, and Labrador. It's also Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, even Manitoba is producing some oil and gas. But also, where are we consuming oil and gas? And that's the entire country. And we are still importing oil from other countries with weaker environmental standards. This does affect everyone, and we need to be having a positive, inclusive conversation. We are all in this together, especially with COVID and recovering from COVID. We need to work together to support local, buy Canadian, get on Team Canada, and talk about how we're leading the world and how we can continue to always improve.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the oil and gas sector, and particularly in Alberta. Obviously, it's been struggling for the last, well, since late 2014, really, so 6 years now. Through this pandemic, we were 6 months into the pandemic. We've really seen virtually no support from the federal government for that sector. Can you talk a little bit about that? Are you surprised? Are you disappointed?
We have an opportunity to get people back to work. We have an opportunity to get these projects built. We need to support our oil and gas industry. And I think when we look at energy as a country, we need a strategy that's inclusive. It's all of the above, because you're not going to run the country on wind and solar anytime soon exclusively. You need hydro, you need nuclear, you need natural gas, you need oil, you need all of these things. And so we are already leading in renewables. We're leading in clean technology. Alberta is going to be home to 2 of the largest wind and solar plants in North America. But the world will still use oil and gas for decades to come. And what I would love to see all Canadian representatives at all levels of government understand the importance to families, our neighbors, our friends, family, community members, fellow Canadian citizens across the country. Let's be competitive in the world. Let's look at what Norway's doing. They are supporting their oil and gas industry with meaningful financial and tax incentives. They are still investing in their renewables and clean technology industries as we are, but they're doing both. And they've said that if they weren't going to do both, if they weren't supporting oil and gas, there would be massive ramifications that are negative for their quality of life and their social program spending. And that is the model we should be looking at as a country that supports these workers. We've heard a lot of positive things from Minister O'Regan and from others talking about leaving no one behind. We really need to see those words put into action.
Yeah. So over the last couple of years, when it comes to the oil and gas sector and the whole issue with emissions and climate change, et cetera, there's been a public relations battle going on out there. Do you think the industry has lost that battle?
I don't think the industry has lost that battle, but I do think the industry has not done enough to make sure that everyone understands how hard they're working to be a part of the solution. In Canada, we were the first jurisdiction in North America, in Alberta, with industrial carbon pricing going back to 2007. Canada's first wind farm, Alberta, 1993. 2 of the world's largest carbon capture and storage facilities, Saskatchewan and Alberta. 4th in the world on the Clean Tech Index, 9th for wind and solar capacity. 80% of our electricity is non-emitting. There's so many examples, and specifically in oil and gas, lowering emissions, collaborating. I mean, we sent a satellite up to monitor emissions. We are working on this problem to be a part of that solution. And we are not, I don't think we are telling the story. The industry is not told that story enough. We need to continue doing that. Industry kind of puts its head down collectively and kind of just keeps working on the engineering and the technical, but there's a lot of misinformation. An example I heard from a woman who said that if the Canadian oil and gas industry was not responsible for 30% of the world's emissions, no one would be opposing it. And we know that Canada as a country is 1.6%. There's a real life example of erroneous, egregious misinformation that people have based opinions on. And we know the biggest benefactor of blocking Keystone XL, as an example, going back 10 years, other heavy oil suppliers to the US Gulf Coast that often do not have carbon pricing initiatives and the same track record of climate action. We do have a track record leading in climate action and climate solutions. And we need to keep telling that story. It's something that we should be proud of.
Yeah. So you did mention earlier that you're a realtor by trade. That's what you do for a living. Tell me why you're so passionate about this area.
Thanks, Mario. You know, in 2009, I had a client named Michael, and he moved from Quebec, and he used to work in pulp and paper. He lost his job. And I remember the day that he bought his home and he took possession of his new home. When I gave him the keys, he started crying. And he said, I never thought I'd own a home. I can't believe I was able to put a roof over my family. His wife, I believe, was a teacher or a daycare provider. He had 2 kids, and that has always stayed with me. And I just think that as a country, we have this abundance of this blessing of natural resources. It's part of what our country's built on. And it's not just resources, it's also our people, our animals, and our beautiful parks, our spaces, our country, our geography, our landscapes. But the fact is, everything that human beings do has an impact on the environment. And I believe if we care about the environment, if we care about advancing social progress, worker and workplace, labor safety, equality, all these other issues, that we should be champions, we should be recognizing and choosing, making a conscious choice to buy those resources and to support that development in the world's most responsible jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. And to me, doing this research and talking to people and seeing it for myself and seeing what we're always doing to improve, I think that is Canada. I think Canada should be a supplier of choice. And I know it impacts my business. I know it impacts everyone's business, resources and oil and gas. And I think we need, as Canadians, to support each other.
Okay, super. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Cody.
It's really my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, that was Cody Battershill, who is founder and CEO of the advocacy group, Canada Action. This has been It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi on Megapix Media. Thanks for joining us today.